But when that 25 years is up and you're faced with this massive ground rent, you've got a problem. And if you want a lease extension or you buy the freehold, you're hit twice over, because the landlord's interest is more valuable because he has the right to this massive ground rent, and your lease is less valuable. So you get hit twice over. So that's a quite long-standing problem, but nobody really cares about the owners of leases in this area. So that's not what's prompted the excitement recently. That's been prompted by big house builders who've seen this as a nice opportunity for some extra cash. And so they've started bringing in ground rents which double every 10 years or sometimes to proportion of market value. And again, it's the problem that people thought they were just buying a straightforward flat. And when 10 years' time, they suddenly find they're faced with a ground rent of £1,000 or something, and to buy it out is going to cost them another £10,000. And that's a problem. And this is really what Parliament wants to do something about. This is what's been perceived as a problem, and it's likely to result in some sort of reform. There's been a proposal to have a cap that you won't have to pay more than 10 times the ground rent to buy it out. I don't know whether that's going to come. But one of the proposals, in which affects all professionals, and one of the issues is what's perceived as the mis-selling issue. And it affects agents, I think, in that, well, is the property being properly described as to what the ground rent is actually, what effect that has on value, what it's going to do in 10 years' time. Often particulars say virtually nothing about ground rent, like lease length, I might add, but that's another issue. But there's very little, so there's potential for government to look at compensation for mis-selling in relation to description of ground rent, and of course have a go at the solicitors who, by and large, have failed to draw the attention of clients to the consequences of ground rent reviews. One might say, well, can you blame them if they're expected to do the job for £500? But they're going to be, I think they're going to be in the firing line as well, which is mainly about building more houses. But one of the things they brought up was the concerns about ground rent that I've just talked about. And that's then developed. There was a private member's bill in November last year by a Labour MP calling for three things: the cap on the amount you have to pay for ground rent, and compensation for mis-selling, which I talked about. That's probably on hold. But the government then produced a further consultation paper called Tackling Unfair Practices in the Leasehold Market. And the published proposals are no new leases of houses, well, that doesn't really affect any of us, mandatory peppercorn rent for all new leases, not surprising, fair enough, compensation for consumers suffering onerous ground rent, so that's the one that will affect us all. And another interesting one, which some of you might have come across, which is that where the ground rent is more than £1,000 in London, the property, the lease, even if you've got a 90-year lease, it's an assured short-hold tenancy, and if you don't pay the ground rent, there's a mandatory ground of possession, which is quite extraordinary, really. But that is another loophole that's going to be closed. And the final proposal is enabling owners of freeholds who pay an estate charge to challenge the reasonableness of that. That's not of such concern to us.